From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast.
I'm happy to be here. What a wonderful time to be alive in the organic world in America. I started out in 1988 when I saw my first organic cow. I was a conventional veterinarian, and I was on this farm. My best client, he had in July a beautiful big Holstein. She had a calf. She did not clean. She had twins and did not pass her placenta. She had stepped on her right front teat, had a coliform mastitis, and was one sick lady. My normal paradigm was to any sick cow a veterinarian sees, you give a complete and thorough physical to know how many things are wrong. I gave this cow a physical. Her heart rate was over 100 when it should be 60. I teach a farmer how to do a physical. Rumen is 2, respiration is 30, heart is 60. Put your hand in the left paralumbar fossa, and twice a minute that ruminal movement should push your hand out. You can feel it and go in. 30 respirations, you just watch the cow. 60 heartbeats, you take your left hand and on the left side of the cow, you run it right down behind the elbow. That's called the olecranon, and you'll feel that heart. You're right on it. A cow that has 100 heart rate is a sick girl. A number of them will not recover. And when they have a heart rate of 100, it isn't going boom, boom, boom. It's going ka-thunka, 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 ka-thunka. And it's like, ooh, we better find out what this girl's done. I get the physical, and then I back up, and I tell my farmer, here's what I find. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what you're going to do tomorrow. I backed up and I said to this farmer, we have to throw the kitchen sink at this girl. She is sick. Now when I got there, my greeting, and because my wife and I had 6 children and were involved in the community, I knew him, he knew me, and I'd usually ask, what's new? And when I got out of my truck into the barn, I said, what's new, Bob? And he said, I think I'm going to go organic. These farmers down at Viroqua that want to go to this organic milk kind of appeal to me. I don't like this volatility of the milk, and they want to have value-added milk, and I think it's the right thing to do. I heard him, but I didn't listen. And I've heard that from my wife many times, sitting in back. She said, you heard me, but you didn't listen. And that was a classic example. So when he says, I'm going organic, I said, well, we got to hit it with tetracycline in the vein. He said, oh, you can't do that. That's an antibiotic. This was before any rules were put out, but these farmers in Vernon County, Wisconsin, that became Organic Valley had said, this is what we are going to do to get a value-added milk. And I said, really? Well, I want to give her dipyrone, which is a drug that lowers the temperature, which has been pulled off the market because it's not permitted anymore. Can't do that. Oh, I want to give her some antihistamines to counteract all the debris floating in her bloodstream. You can't do that. Finally, I looked at him and I said, what can I do? He said, you can give her fluids and energy. And I said, well, what about this placenta? It's July, it's 90 degrees. That thing's going to go south quick. He said, I can take care of it. This farmer was so far ahead of me from using homeopathy and the old Native American remedies and the gypsies remedies that I gave her a bottle of glucose and a bottle of lactated ringers, and I said, why don't you just look over that way and I'm going to stick 2 pills in her uterus quick and you won't even know anything about it. He said, you can't do that. You can't do that. I was embarrassed to write up the bill in 1988. He was a soils consultant listening to Gary Zimmer, who he took me to later to listen to Gary Zimmer. And I go home and I wanted sympathy from my wife. And I said, I don't like what's happening with this organic. I don't know anything about it. And my wife said, why don't you learn something? And I did. I started reading. I read about aloe vera. I started making tinctures. And one thing at a time, we now make over 100 items in Dr. Paul's lab. That was my beginning into organics. So I had a 4-man practice. We had 4 red Dodge pickups, and we left town at 7:30, and we had a fire engine practice, putting out fires, until I started hearing this holistic approach. And I learned from Gary Zimmer that it all starts in the soil. And don't ever forget it, because that's where it all starts. And so we would have a client. I'm going to see if I can go the right way here. Read that while I talk. I had, you would have a client when I had four vets, or the 4 of us, and all of a sudden this farm would go south. This guy was a good farmer. This guy had good crops. He had good sanitation. And every cow we'd see there would die. And it got hard to pregnancy check. It was like sticking your hand in a well pipe. And the cows were just fractious and irritable. And you'd wonder, what happened to Waldera's farm? What's happening? Okay? And so this issue of DC current started cropping up. So let's back up. Here's the earth. We have a iron nickel center that's molten. Iron and nickel. Because of the rotation of the earth, this is liquid and it's being moved around, and it sets up a magnetic current. We're going to talk about currents now. A magnetic current. This 30% is center, 65% is molten lava, and 5% is where we have the 92 elements that are on the elemental chart that are naturally occurring. Where you have a tectonic plate is where you have volcanic activity. This magnetic energy is created by this molten, or this iron nickel, and this comes throughout the surface, and it exit, and it's in our atmosphere. We have magnetic energy coming out of our Earth into our atmosphere. This is picked up in a vortex. When you have a tornado, that magnetic energy goes into that tornado. When you have a structured water device, how many of you know what a structured water device is? A structured water device is when you stir water into a vortex in the presence of crystals, and you're changing the structure of water. Water is normally a 10-sided tetrahedron where there's 2 H's and an O, and when you run through a vortex and structure it, you expand that. It's no longer 10-sided, it's more, and so water has different properties. Like you won't have any LJ in your water tank. It'll take care of a sulfur smell. In that structured water, file that away, because structured water is coming big time. Europe is huge on it. And so you will see more structured water. I was born and raised in a little town called Grand Meadow, Minnesota. And this blue stuff is flat prairie land. My dad's farm was as flat as this floor, 5 feet of black heavy soil. This area here was not covered by the Wisconsin glacier. This is called the Dubuque Lobe that went down into Iowa here, and this is all flat land. I live right now about right there in Arcadia. You got Winona, La Crosse, Eau Claire. Very, very, very hilly. Very different in soils. Paleo-man was in there. We will find artifacts from Paleo-man that are 12, 13, 14,000 years old. Here's a periodic table. You know how the periodic table is. There's got hydrogen, there's one electron going around, one proton and one neutron. If you add another one, then it becomes helium. Helium with 2 electrons and 2 protons and 2 neutrons has different properties than hydrogen. You have different frequencies. When you have the electron going around a proton and neutron, you have 2 forces at work. One is called centrifugal, which is why we use a cream separator to separate the cream from the skim milk. And the centrifugal goes out. The force going in is centripetal, and these 2 forces create a frequency. Everything is frequency. Electromagnetic fields are frequency. How many know what a radionics machine is? Radionics measures frequency. Apis Mel, I got a senior moment. Chickenpox, herpes. Herpes zoster is chickenpox. Herpes in your lip has a frequency because you have molecules or elements. You can capture that frequency, and with a radionics machine, you can stop a cold sore from developing. Radionics is really an interesting subject. But here's the 92 elements that are found on this planet. And that's the periodic table. There's a whole 2-credit course in college on the periodic table. Here's the spin of the electron. Now, if they go, when they come clockwise, they have a negative charge. If they come counterclockwise, they have a positive charge. If this electron spins the other way, hydrogen and nitrogen are 2 elements that can flip charges. The rest can't. Here's the cations. Now the cations have 3 times the energy of an anion. Corey Reams figured this out. Each electron that rotates has 750 Milhouse. Milhouse was a scientist of energy. Over here, an anion going this way has only 250 Milhouses of energy, okay? Of the 16 major items that go through a root hair or an intestinal villi, the one with the most electrons is calcium. Calcium has 22 electrons, so you take 22 times 750, that gives you 50,150 ergs or Milhouse units of energy. It so happens that the other ones have less energy because they're anions or they have less electrons. Calcium is the key. When calcium enters a root hair or an intestinal villi, it clears the energetic pathway to anything with a lesser charge to be absorbed. That's why Albrecht's system says that calcium is king. If you don't have enough calcium, soluble calcium out there, you're not going to absorb the minerals you want, and you'll have a sick plant. What sources of current do we have in this planet? We have ley lines. Ley lines are energy that's going through the surface, usually in high carbon area. The pioneers that came over from Europe knew a lot about ley lines. They were all water witchers. My great-great-grandfather, when he came to Grand Meadow, Minnesota in 1848, flat prairie, and he went to dig a well, he wanted to dig over water. And he was a water witcher. How many people here in this room are dowsers? One. We have lost the art of dowsing. Every water department has somebody that's a dowser. You don't laugh at dowsing. You learn how to douse by doing it. Dowsing is absolutely amazing. Young females are really good at pendulum dowsing. Did you see the one down? Bill Winter has got all those nice dowses, or those rocks, a pendulum. Pendulum, you put it over your finger, and you clear your mind, and you say, show me yes. My yes is back and forth. Show me no. You know how where you use that at Dr. Paul's? We stir our tinctures once a week into a vortex. Do we stir lobelia? Which way do we stir lobelia? Do we go clockwise? No. Or do we go counterclockwise on lobelia? Yes. So we stir it counterclockwise. Our two daughters, oldest daughters, knew how to douse. Should I date Roger again? Oh, bye, Roger. Hartmann lines. Hartmann lines are in the soil. Curry lines are every 16 feet and they're diagonal. In China, you cannot build a house on a property until you douse it. You do not want to have a curry line intersecting with a ley line or underground water, because you will have negative energies there. Schumann lines. What are Schumann lines? Schumann lines are from lightning. Some place today on this planet, it may be in Nepal and Brazil and Sri Lanka, but there's a thunderstorm with lightning, and lightning puts an electromagnetic charge, and on the surface, it's on the surface of the planet. It's not underground, so you have this going here. These are all called geopathic ground currents, and it's electricity. Okay, then we have grid energies, okay? That's our electric transmission lines. Every pole, every transformer in the United States is grounded. It's grounded. I'll get into that deeper. Cosmic energies coming out of the cosmos, solar flares, cell phones, radio towers, TV towers, G5 towers. Anything that is a tower is putting out an electromagnetic field. And that's you know what an electromagnetic field is? It's like a sign, and some may be like this, and some may be like this. But anytime you have an electromagnetic field, don't forget this. When an electromagnetic field hits anything that will conduct electricity, it sets up DC current. And DC current totally blows the immune system on a cow, on a mammal, on humans, pigs in Iowa, and these little 600 pig units are an electrical Auschwitz. Gas lines, all your gas lines in America that are major transmission gas lines are either 42-inch cast iron or 36-inch cast iron, and they put a cathodic charge on it so they don't corrode. And they got little yellow flags going all across America. Okay? I had another one here I thought of that I missed. But anyway, this is all, okay. In the spring, you have to have energy in the soil in the spring to germinate a seed. A seed needs 300 ergs. What's an erg? It's called an energy raised per gram of soil. What causes energy, electricity in the soil in the spring in Arcadia, Wisconsin? Microbes. Microbes. I've got a stand-up chart that I take to meetings that lists all the microbes. There's bacteria there's fungi, there's algae, there's amoebas, there's lichens. Anything that's in the decomposition business, when it breaks apart, you see when photosynthesis makes sugars and proteins and carbohydrates, aloe vera is a sugar that's thousands of carbons long. Carbon is the only element on the elemental chart that can double bond it to itself. No other element. We are a carbon-based living plants and animals. And so when you put together through photosynthesis this 3,000 carbon sugar of aloe vera, when you break that apart so it can go through an intestinal villi or a root hair, you liberate energy. The double bond, you hook a nitrogen onto the carbon and you have a bond. You also, its frequency, that bond is, the second part of that is its energy. You capture energy from the sun, put it in this bond on this carbon molecule. This is important because when you synthesize aspirin in a lab by a chemist, Mother Nature did not have anything to do with it. There's no sun involved, so the aspirin molecule has no energy in it. It's only a bond. The aspirin in willow bark, acetylsalicylic acid, the aspirin in St. John's wort, which is natural, has electricity in it. Therefore, anything made in a lab has side effects. That's why all these drugs have side effects. Does garlic have a side effect? It's going to hurt you? No, it'll give you bad breath, but that's it. It's metabolically not hurting you, okay? But remember, the electromagnetic field turns into DC current. Now, our whole system in the United States is based on bringing an anode and a cathode out with a neutral. The ground is the return. Every pole, if you've got 61 kilovolt line and you're only using 50 kilovolts, where's that 10 kilovolts go? It's in the line. It goes into the ground, back to the substation, the source of origin, by Ohm's law, which is the path of least resistance. It doesn't go right back by the poles. If you got a pole on a little knob with dry, sandy, gravelly soil, you're going to have huge Ohm's resistance. If you got a little stream over here with organic matter and a CEC of 12 and the CEC of this ridge here is 4, that is going to follow this stream. It'll meander. They know where, you can see this with infrared photography. When they put a transformer in, they can tell you how it's getting back to the substation. If you happen to have a low area and you put a 600 head pig operation in there with a pit, all lagoons and pits with bacteria generate a 0.5 volt to a 3/4 volt of electricity. These slurry stores, lagoons, they're a battery. And it's going to seek out, and so you got this pig building, concrete with manure digesting, with re-rods, metal sides, metal tops. These pigs are getting cooked. I feel sorry for pigs because pigs are smart, and they're trapped in an electrical Auschwitz. I'm sorry, but pigs need to be outside. A pig should get 60% of its diet from under the ground. That's why they got a snout. And so we've taken them out of the paradigm. Ley lines, interesting story. West of Arcadia, had a nice little farmer. The wife took care of the calves. They got 19 calf hutches. She said, "Doc, I want to show you, I got a hutch with a problem." We go over and you see this little guy here? What's he doing? He's drinking some urine and mud here. And in the morning, she comes out, and right inside here, she's got a metal ring with a calf pail for calf starter, and that calf is crawled under there and lodged under there. She's got to take this pig panel down, crawl in, pull the calf back, get him away from there, and get him up. and he won't drink his whole milk. This is an organic farm. She said, I've lost 3 calves in that blankety blank hutch. See these? We have to relearn old knowledge. Those are L rods. I use brazing rods. And you take them, you clear your mind. Women are good dowsers, but I would use brazing rods. And you clear your mind and you practice. And you say, show me yes. And I'm going to fake this now, okay, because I don't have a clear mind. I'm trying to remember what's next. And so, but anyway, here's my yes. Yes. Show me no. So I asked the question, show me, first I asked, are there negative energies bothering this calf? Yes. Yes. Show me, and you walk. And you walk real slow, and you clear your mind, and ooh. And I would always lay my billfold down because it's pretty light, you know. And I get over here, and you've got an electromagnetic field here. Is this an underground water line? No. Is this underground water? No. Is this a ley line? Yes. If it's underground water and it's on a side hill, is it 2 feet deep, 4 feet deep, 6 feet deep, 8 feet deep, 10 feet deep, 12 feet deep? Go back, is it 11 feet deep? You got underground water flowing, carrying electricity. Which way is it flowing? Going that way. See that bobcat in back? I said, John, go get that bobcat. Why? I said, we're going to move that hutch. I took the panel off. He brings the bobcat down. We pick that hutch up. We move it down to the end of the line. What should I do? I said, start feeding your calf. She gave it milk the night, 3 or 4 hours later, the calf drank the whole gallon down. She calls me in 3 days. She said, how much milk can I feed that calf? She said, that calf's eating everything I got. Eating everything we got. This is the same calf. See the stripe here? That calf just blossomed. So, about 6 months later, she decides, I'm going to put a calf back in that hutch and see, or put a calf in there. Same exact thing happened. Same exact thing. Now, the old pioneers that built all these churches, calcium doesn't conduct electricity. And here's a church 2 miles from our house, and this is a little Lutheran church. The old pioneers on their houses and churches spread lime to protect it from ground currents because they wanted to have the current from the congregation, and that steeple is acting as an antenna. They're creating their own little electromagnetic field by blanking any subterranean stuff from going. All these old churches had lime put around them. The pioneers knew more than we did. So, okay, here's a power plant at Alma, Wisconsin, on the Mississippi. And it generates mega electricity. And it sends it out on big lines. Here's a big line. The taller the tower, the higher the kilovolt. This is a 500 kV. 500,000 kilovolts are going, and it's going to Blair, Wisconsin. And this is a substation 6 miles east of us. And then this feeds probably a dozen little smaller substations. And whoever's the 28 farmers and the 17 houses that are getting fed off this line here, all the electricity comes back to this line, to this substation. Do you know how they build a substation? I saw this one being built. We had a problem with substations in that Arcadia is a town that has Ashley Furniture, 4,000 employees, Golden Plump processing plant. It's a little town with a lot of workers and a lot of motors. And it was feeding Independence north of here 8 miles. And when Arcadia needed more electricity, they said, Independence, we're going to feed you off the Whitehall substation. And the line going from Whitehall to Independence was put in 1937, and it was too small. And to jack up the line, they put on capacitors, which is what I'll show you. It takes a 61-volt transmission line, and they need 77 during peak production or peak usage in the afternoon. So these capacitors appear in 3, and you'll see them, and they jack it up. What happens at 3 o'clock in the morning when nobody's using it, they're overloaded, and it's putting electricity into the ground. And I had a 450 cow herd that was my golden herd. I went there every Wednesday, and these 2 guys were top-notch farmers. One of them was an engineer. They were both college educated, and they came home to run the farm, and they had a 48-inch gas line on the south side of their dairy facility, and they come right in front and they put these 3 capacitors. They usually appear on a pole. There'll be 1, 2, 3 poles right in the order. Or they'll put a platform up and they'll put 2 posts up or 2 poles up and they put them in between. You can see them all over. That means they really need to put a heavier line in. But it's a Band-Aid until they do. My guru looked at his map, and they put substation on magnetic field lines. The energy out, it's a ley line or a Hartman line, but all substations, it's picked where they are at, and they can tell ground currents from infrared. He said they're going to build a substation either on the Gimza farm or over here. One day I'm going by the Gimza farm, and here they had scraped off all the dirt. Here they had scraped off all the dirt. 2 days later I go by, and they've got probably 100 big copper rods. There had to have been 16-footers, and then boom, 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 boom. They drove those copper rods into the ground, thick as a hair in a dog. And then they come with about 3 feet of rock salt. When you go by a substation, you notice there's no grass going. They don't use Roundup, they use salt. They created a battery to draw the electricity back, so they reharvest it from the line. Electricity just doesn't disappear. It has to make a circuit. And that's the whole premise of this talk. Doppler. Organic Valley had a group of Amish farmers in Kentucky, and here is Fort Campbell. Fort Campbell. This Doppler gives off a huge electromagnetic field, and they locate Dopplers by airports and that. There's a railroad track here, there's a railroad track here, there's a power line here. This is super grounded, this whole Doppler. The Doppler effect really throws a cow for a loop. You do not want to be within a mile of a Doppler effect. Here's Mayville, Wisconsin. That's the airports. That's airports. When you get a Doppler effect, they get buggy-eyed. Look at that girl. They get buddy, and the water turns black. That's a Doppler. There's current in this water. There's current in this water. Here's a cow that is grounding herself out. This is a parlor. See here, she's pushing. Here's her nose. She's pushing on this pipe here. She's grounding herself out. But this is close to a Doppler at Mayville. Okay, so I told you Arcadia has got all these motors running. It's a small town. We're up to 3,700, and the grounding in Arcadia is, there's so much grounded electricity from all these motors that they're afraid somebody is going to get electrocuted on the neutral. So when you're driving through the country, you'll see these, and then you get by a town with a lot of electricity, they will string expensive steel posts. And this goes for 7 miles. This is our driveway is up here. This is by town, and these come all the way out to town. This is the grounding system for Arcadia, Wisconsin. You go to Brillion, Wisconsin, which has Brillion Iron Works and lots of industry. They got steel poles going out in the country. They're dissipating the DC current. When you ground AC current, this is going to be on the test. When you ground AC current, it becomes DC current. And DC current totally destroys the immune system. A cow and a human were nothing but a salt solution that's electrically wired in a bunch of skin. And we have positives and negatives with a charge that make me up. So you run current into me, you're screwing up, you're unbalancing. Every compound in an animal is balanced. If you have a compound that is short 2 electrons to make the 8 rings, you see in that first ring you got 2 electrons, and then from thereafter you got 8. So if you've got a ring, 2 rings, and you got a ring with 6, he's not complete. He's looking to match up with somebody that's got 2 extra. So you got 2 extra that hooks up with this guy that's 2 short, and you have a balanced charge. Now, a free radical is when you eat something that Mother Nature did not make, and it's a side effect, and it hooks onto you, and it gives you a positive charge floating around. A positive charge balances your electrical system. How do you get rid of a positive charge? Really simple. Well, William Albrecht and Dr. Zimmer, or Gary Zimmer, taught me that our Earth has a negative charge. Anybody that knows Albrecht system of soil balancing, and if you're going to be organic, the NPK is dead. NPK is prehistoric. It's not good chemistry. You learn the Albrecht system. And they work at a base saturation of calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. And you want 70%, and you want 15%, and 7-8% with a pH of 6.5 to 6.8, and you will grow a good plant. Okay? And so this ends right below our driveway. Okay, this is in Colorado. We have some property up in the mountains. This is from Farmington, New Mexico. This is the biggie. 750 kilovolts going all the way to Grand Junction through the mountains. There's also a gas line in here. This puts out an electromagnetic field. How do you measure electromagnetic fields? With a little device that costs about $100 called a Gauss meter. Organic Valley has 22 field men in the nation, and all 22 guys have a Gauss meter. And you can go up to a variable speed fan in a barn, in a pig barn, in a chicken barn, in a pit with the weigh jar that pumps milk into the bulk tank, and you have a variable speed fan down in that pit. When that baby turns on, you're putting an electromagnetic field, and it's going into the stalls, into the milking deal. And I've seen where I was in Indiana, and there was supposed to be 8 cows on each side, and the motor is right down here, and nobody would go in this 8th stall. And the 7th one would back way up. And they got mastitis. You take your Gauss meter and you turn this on. You do not want to live in more than 3 Gauss. And this goes up to 80 Gauss. Neat little thing. I had a case that I went to a farm in southern Wisconsin where they were having somatic cell count problems. One of the first things that happens when you get DC current into a situation is that their immune system's in the toilet. But they have somatic cell, or they have somatic cell count. And this herd had a somatic cell count. He was doing everything right. And I went down there to look at things, and he said the cows, he had cows over here and cows over here. There was 6 and 6, and the exit was there. And he said the cows, when they let them out of this here, he said they run out like jackrabbits, and they slip and they slide and they bang their hips up. These cows don't bother. And I said, really? And so I said, okay, let me check. And I got my dowsing rods out, and I walk, and I get, boom, for about 3 feet. Let me do that again. And I walk, boom. And I look up, and here's a clock, Farm Credit Association, with a circular fluorescent light. And I went and got my Gauss meter, and I turned it on, 15 Gauss. The cattle could pick that up. And I said, Jim, go in and unplug that clock. And so, when nothing, I doused it, nothing. I said, turn that clock off. And he had his fencer grounded right next to his manure pit. And he was putting electricity in that manure pit with re-rod, and it was going through his whole parlor. I said, get that fencer. No fencer should be grounded in the yard. Fencers should be grounded out. And if you don't like solar fencer, get yourself a weed eater, because you're not taking care of it. You don't need 14 joules to zap a cow. You can get by with a 6-7 joule fencer if you maintain it. And I tell people, when you go to town to get a fencer, a solar fencer, bring home a weed eater and walk your fence every week to 10 days, because it's going to short out. And it doesn't matter how many joules you got. A fencer is something that needs to be maintained. So I said, let me know what happens. He called me about a month later, and I saw him at an Organic Valley meeting. He said, boy, did that work. And he said, you know, I just thought I'd try it one time. And he said, I went and plugged that clock in. He said, the second cow that went out stopped, and he said, all the rest of them charged out. He said, they knew it immediately. They could pick up this electromagnetic field, and they knew it bothered them. Here's Pennsylvania, working for Organic Valley. Nice herd. Nice farm.
Hey, eco farmers. This is Taylor Henry with Acres USA. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoy interviewing these folks. If you're serious about regenerative agriculture, I've got an incredible resource you need to check out, the Acres USA membership. You farm in the physical world, and you deserve a physical printed magazine to match. Since 1971, Acres USA magazine has been the leading voice in ecological agriculture, delivering the best insights from regenerative farmers, agronomists, and researchers to help you farm profitably without toxic chemicals. Our membership included physical and digital copies of the magazine each month of the year, which has always been a standard for Acres USA, but we wanted to over-deliver on content. When I acquired this business, I was happy to find that we had years of audio files from presentations at our annual EcoAg conference. And guess what? They were hiding. Well, not anymore. We developed this membership portal that gives you access to the recordings from farmers like Gabe Brown, Gary Zimmer, Joel Salatin, and Mark Shepard. We also include recordings of private events. Finally, if you are like me and you like listening to content, we are now producing a membership-only podcast of each issue of the magazine, so you can consume each article while you're out in the field. To make things even sweeter, you'll get discounts on books, workshops, and events to keep expanding your knowledge. So are you ready to take your farming to the next level? Join today for a ridiculously low price at eco-farming.com or see details in the notes.
What do we got here? This is a 345 kV, okay? What do we got here? The Lumen trailer house, 345 with an electromagnetic field. Here's one down by the driveway, 345. Here's the same farm on the other, going back from the house. This is electrolysis starting to turn this black, okay? Here's a hoop building, wonderful building. At 23.5 degrees arc, that's picking up an electromagnetic field. These metal hoops, the first hoop buildings were put right down into the concrete. So you had a metal hoop, you were filling this with an electromagnetic field, big time. Now they've got concrete that comes up about this high with re-rod, so it's wind protected. That's even worse because the concrete, and if there's concrete inside, these are hot. These are hot with DC current. Okay, back up. I said, who lives in that trailer house? He said, my son and daughter-in-law. Oh, I said, anything going on there? Oh yeah, he said, she's had 3 miscarriages. She's had 3 miscarriages. Why? I said, you get her out of that house, she is you are cooking them with electromagnetic field. And he listened. This was an Englishman. Sometimes they don't catch on as quick as you Amish guys. I love working with the Amish and the Mennonites because you guys get it. You know, you don't have the book learning, but you guys got so much common sense. You are fun to work with. Anyway, within 6 months, she got pregnant. She got pregnant. I'm talking out of experience. I don't have a lot of book learning on electricity, but I had 2 consultants that when we saw this stuff coming down, because I was a senior member of the practice, we knew something was up. It just wasn't. And I called the 2 guys and they said, what is this stuff? And a guy by the name of Lyle Sell took me under his wing and trained me for the last 30 years. You're shaking your head because I sent him to California and he saved their necks. Agree? Yeah. And so he taught me all this. This is personal observation. And remember, personal observation is the most reliable source of truth. I practiced 31 years and never got a mummy out of a uterus with all the hormones known to man. When I started practice, there was a drug called ECP, estradiol cypionate, mega doses of estrogen. And what a mummy is, it's a cow that conceives and takes the calf for about 4 months, and the calf dies inside the cow. Either it's got a birth defect or it's a traumatic injury that kills the calf, but it's not infected. And when it's not infected, the cervix stays closed. So this is the 9th of December. She was supposed to calve on the 14th of November. And man, she was bagged up in August. She's bagged up in August. And so you reach in her, and what the mother does, what nature does, is it draws the fluid out of the uterus. It's called inspissation. And you end up with a little bony, gooey calf, and it's about the size of a Frisbee. And once you've felt one, you never miss them. When I had my 4-man practice, we got interns from Auburn, Georgia in our 4-man practice. Our job was to teach them some of the tricks of the trade that they don't get in vet school out of a book. And boy, we had some cracker jacks. Auburn was one heck of a vet school. And if we'd get one, I'd say, hey, reach in here and remember this, because hormones, prostaglandin, luteolase, double dose, triple dose. My big 400 cow herd had a girl that they were getting ovaries out of, or eggs out of. They were ovulating her and putting them in uteruses of heifers. It was the best cow they've ever had. She came up with the money. And of course, it's always a good cow. And I said, well, you might as well butcher her. And they said, and I was using organic stuff in this herd. The uterine treatment for retained afterbirth in the organics is the best there is. It's better than any drugs or chemicals or antibiotics. The aloe vera and the caulophyllum and the CEG is just a home run for treating retained afterbirth. And he said, why don't you put some of that plant juice in her, Doc? Well, I had blue cohosh, which is caulophyllum, which is grown in the Appalachians. Now we started a new dealer in the south bottom of West Virginia in the Appalachians, and that's where caulophyllum grows. The Native Americans knew about it. They called it, I got a senior moment. They used it for females having childbirth problems. They would give them this root, and they would chew on it. And they would chew on it and swallow the saliva, and it would cause dilation of the cervix, and they give the uterus tone. And so I left a bottle of this caulophyllum, and they had a female herdsperson that was really good. And I said, I want you to put in 10 cc's of this every day in the vulva, and I'll be back next Wednesday. I got them off my case. Let's move on. They don't work. I get there next week, and her name was Stevie, and she said, Doc, that cow's really pushing. And I thought, oh, I bet she scratched the top of the, because we use a syringe with a pipette, a 6-inch pipette, and you ride it along the top of the vertebrae, and I thought, oh, I bet she irritated her. And so I went over there, and here this calf, if we'd have waited 2 hours, she'd have stretched her vulva lips. I put a sleeve on, and I grabbed that little mummy, and I said, Tom, this is the first time in 31 years I ever got a mummy out of a cow's uterus, and it was a plant from nature. It's none of these hormones. Don't tell me caulophyllum doesn't work. And my problem is that my peers say, show me the data. And I say, personal observation is the most reliable source of truth. I don't need data. I know caulophyllum. And Tom, working at our booth at Dr. Paul's, has gotten 80% of them out also. And so it works. And so I better move on. I've only got the beginning of my slides here. You people want to stay around for a couple, 3 hours? Okay, gas pipelines. Gas pipelines all have a cathodic charge on them so they don't rust. This is going down Highway 71 in eastern Wyoming, and here is, oh, wrong one, I need my, see here's a transformer. This is a cathodic system, and see this yellow flag, the yellow? All gas pipelines have a yellow, here's a yellow, and that puts a charge on there, and they're paying the electric company to charge this is a cast iron pipeline. Now, see this here? You have to legally have shutoffs every so often in case somebody with a backhoe rips into this. They're required by law. Current flow in the soil does not do a 90-degree turn. So you got this line coming from over here, and then it turns up, goes over here, goes over here, it goes down. When you get, I got too big a thumb. When this current is coming, it does not go up. This current starts going, and you're spreading this current out. Here's another cathodic charge. There's a big one. There's a big one. You don't want to be within a quarter mile of that. When you see those gas pipelines coming out, and you know there's a 90-degree turn, electricity will arc. It'll arc. It'll arc. Here's another one. Now they have a swamp here, and so they're putting shields over these to make the current go down. This isn't rare. This is a half a volt of cathodic charge going on to the pipeline. Here's another one. Okay, here's a gas pipeline in a farm that I deal with. It's buried 100 feet from a calf barn. They went and they put capacitors in front of this. This is a different situation. And here is a calf in their calf barn. This is how they will act. He's grounding out his nose, standing in something wet, and he's got his foot up, and he's got ringworm. This is a classic calf in stray voltage. They'll get long hair. It looks like they're wormy. This is concrete with a re-rod, and this pipeline is right over here. It's coming right into this. This is a ringworm on a thirsty calf. And this calf is on the other side, and this guy has got ringworm. It destroys the immune system. Okay, South Dakota. We took a bunch of farmers out in South Dakota. They were all little farmers, and they all had trouble getting on organic. Valley struck because they couldn't get their somatic cell count under 400,000. So I go out there, my boss says, go out there and see what's happening. And here I find, this is on 3 farms, little bitty 15 kV. 15 kV. Let's see how he's getting rusty. This one's really rusty, sitting really close to the barn. When they get rusty or they leak oil, they're undersized. They're undersized. I went to about 7 farms out there, and 6 of them had a problem. Okay? I wrote a letter, and I said, you don't talk lawsuit, you talk, let's fix the problem. And I wrote a letter, and I said, I do not like a 15 kilovolt transformer on this farm. It's undersized, it's rusty. Would you please upgrade to at least a 27.5 kV transformer and put it out in the driveway so it isn't right by the milk house? They had a farm cooperative, and they will work with you. The big con eds and the big ones will throw everybody under the bus, including me, or anybody talks about DC current. DC current does not exist, because if they say it exists, it's their AC current that's causing it. And so they have blinders on, and they'll argue till the end of the earth. But I wrote a nice letter, and I said, when I see this, I see health issues. These herds are having difficulty getting on our truck because their health system has got high cell count in the milk. Would you please move these and upgrade them? And when they know they're caught dead in the water, this little co-op changed every one of them, put 27.5 and put them out in the car. And they said, who's seeing that? Who are you talking? And I said, don't tell them I'm a veterinarian. Tell them I work for Organic Valley, and I see thousands of farms, and when I see this, they all have a somatic cell count problem. And they complied. They complied. So if you have a problem, work at correcting it, and don't talk about lawsuits. You're not going to win. You're wasting your time. It's nothing but a money game for the attorneys. Just get compliant and get somebody competent. Here we have a parlor. This is a milking parlor in here. Here is their fuse box. Here's their generator. This baby is grounded right here. This baby is grounded. My thumb is too big, guys. Oh, wait, I'm going the wrong way again. I need my wife up here. There. That has got to be moved. That has got to be moved. The generator is fine, but you should never have your service entrance right here. 15 kilovolt, oily, that thing's hot, that's overloaded. Change it. And they know this. They know this. And if you bring it to their attention nicely, they will help you. Here is a 10. I had never seen anything, and this was on an organic farm, and they were struggling. Here's another one. Here's another one. When I drive in a yard, the first thing I do is I look. Now, all these transformers, see this one? The milk house is right in here, and this is grounded here. All transformers, and this will be on the test, grounded transformers talk to the magnetic North Pole. You do not want your transformer on the south side of your barn. You want it on the north side of the barn. Now we are experiencing a problem right now in that geologists, we have a son that's a geologist and one that's an archaeologist, but the geologist knows that the North Pole is moving. Have you heard in the popular press the North Pole has moved down into Siberia? Every 85,000 years, the North Pole switches. How does it do it? Remember, I said the positives go one way and the negatives go the other way. When the lava reverses positions, the lava is slowly moving. And when the lava, if it's going counterclockwise, decides to go clockwise, it will flip the poles. Now, I don't think I'm going to live another 84,000 years to see this happen, but when that happens, all of the transformers that I moved to the north side of the barn are now going to talk to the South Pole. But we probably won't have any cows or Homo sapiens by then, the way we're going. So that guy went out of business. Here's a capacitor. These are all over America. I think my wife can see capacitors a mile ahead of me. She's gotten so good at seeing them. Here's 3 of them. Here's 3 of them. That means this line is undersized. Here's 1, 2, 3 in a row. Here's one, and look at that transformer, rusty. Here's 3 of them. These are from 3 different places in the United States. I just love taking pictures of capacitors. Yeah. Here's 3 of them. See this building? Look at here. Look at here. These are giving off an electromagnetic field, and it's rusting that tin. That's this building here, just down the road. Here's some more. Okay, this is, I live 2 miles from here, down that hill. There were a couple entrepreneurs from Blair that got a big wood miser, and they put a big saw, an electric 100-horse saw motor here, and it takes a lot of energy to start that 100 horsepower. And this is a little bitty line going down through a couple valleys and nothing big happening. So here, they don't have this sawmill in a month, and here we go with a capacitor. They came out and put a capacitor in here to jack up the kilovolts in this line so that this thing would start. That line is undersized. At 3 o'clock in the morning, fortunately, the only thing that's close to this thing is a bunch of deer up, and it's not bothering anybody. But if this were, and they like to put capacitors in a wet area, in a swampy area, because it really dissipates the electricity. And so, here is a substation. Now we got a bunch of lines going this way. We got this going this way. Here's a cell tower. Here's a substation. We go down a little bit further, and here's a slurry store. That's 1/2 volt of electricity. Okay, and here's a house. This is before you come to this. So he's got a slurry store, a power line, a tower. He's got so much electricity floating around his yard that there's no cattle on that farm anymore. Transformer is to the south over here. Why is this rusty? Because he's got a lagoon under this. No lagoon under here. This lagoon is generating electricity by the bacterial, the microbial activity, and it's going up, rusting that. Fencers and trainers should never, ever, ever, ever be in an animal facility, folks, because they're all grounded. This is 2 Gallaghers. 2 Gallaghers. The Gallaghers are the creme de la creme as far as jewels. I mean, it really zaps them. These are, boy, if you can get rid of the trainers, these trainers are, when they zap them, and these are grounded someplace really close to the barn. But this is kind of in the humane area. Organic Valley says, get rid of your trainers. We don't want them. Here is fences. I have in my book, I have a whole chapter on the do's and don'ts of fences. And I won't get into that other than mention a few things. You got a water line underneath this fence. You got current in that black plastic water line, okay? Okay. Here is this is interesting. Here's a steel post, and they got a little short, and these, you use these long enough and they shock out, and they don't, but we're going up this hill here. This fence goes up this hill, 4/10 of a mile, and right behind me is a brand new setup here. Right over to my left is a brand new setup. And you know what they got up here? A 345 kilovolt line, and this fence is picking up. There's 9 volts of electricity on this electric fence and on the barbed wire, coming off from an electromagnetic field from a 345. And then over here, there's a Ritchie water. And we're out there because this guy, his cell count's 500, 600,000, and he can't figure it out.
Hey there. Did you attend our EcoAg conference this year in Madison, Wisconsin? Well, if you didn't, or if you did, we've got the recordings now available. Get on-demand access to every session with the EcoAg recordings. Learn directly from the pioneers of soil health, livestock integration, and profitable regenerative systems, all at your own pace. Speakers include Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, John Kempf, Joel Salatin, and a lot more. We also have additional products that include the full-day workshops done by Matt Powers, John Kempf, Nigel Palmer, Jordan Green, Mark Shepard, and Austin Unruh. These workshops are in depth and will help you dig deep on the presenters' topics. Grab your recordings now at conference.eco-ag.com/24 recordings or find the link in the notes. Because the best investment you can make is in your own knowledge. Now back to the show.
And so we're out there, and here's this Ritchie water. And it was a dry cow. This is a dry cow pasture right here. And these three heifers and this cow come down to this metal Ritchie water that we know is hot because that whole area is hot. And they stand there. And I'm with Al Hass, who works for Organic Valley, and I said, they know that's hot. They know, and they kind of stand there and they look around, and pretty soon the older cow was smart enough, you know, the lips and the tongue. Everybody ever gets stung by a bee when you drink a pop and that your lips are so sensitive? That older cow was smart enough, she went and she laid her jaw on it and took the static charge off, and the other three just jumped in and drank. They knew. And we'll show you some more stuff on water. But fencers are a real violator, a real violator. Nobody knows how to, see this wire? That's the ground wire. They got the electric fence nailed to this post touching the ground wire. The current is going right into this fence. That's a no-no. Here it is too. Things this guys never think of. Here's a tire. What's in that tire? Metal. And you're running the fence right over that tire. Here's another one. Fence is touching it. Here, look at here, Ritchie water. You want waters to be poly or rubber. You do not want metal. You do not want a metal water. End of conversation. And these cows know that. See, look at there. That water will have a static charge, and you see a lot of this blackness. That's not rare. Here is a calf. Boy, that calf looks wormy. No, that calf is short of water. They get strawy, and you're going to see, next thing you'll see ringworm. They got long, dry, strawy hair. Now, you know how you group calves. Am I about done? Oh, man, I'm in trouble. I thought this was, you got to be mistaken. Ooh, no, I go to 6. Yeah. Oh, how do you group calves? There's been studies done. Calves, group of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You never put 7 calves in a pen or 5 calves in a pen. They buddy up. And how you identify the odd one? You look for coccidiosis. You look for a calf that's not doing well, and on their hocks, they'll have a little bit of smeary manure. And they'll have a hair coat like this. And they're behind. And they're not drinking much water. And feed intake follows water intake. If you drink 10% less water, you're going to take in 10% less feed. This isn't worms. This is stray voltage. This is stray DC. There's no stray voltage. They know where it's going. Okay? Here's an old setup that was put in the 37s. This is Romax. Right here. That'll carry a half a volt of electricity. Here's the old fuse box. The entrance boxes, keep them clean. You want to go in with a new 100 amp, here's a new 100 amp service. Update them. Here's an interesting scenario. This farmer went broke here, DC current. See this silo? That's a big bottom unloading silo, filled from the top, and it's got a big motor that goes round and round, and he took this stall barn, put an addition on, and he put a parlor right in here, and right behind me is a transformer. So this silo is going right through his parlor, rusting here. He had 5 volts of electricity and all the equipment in his parlor, and his cows kicked the milkers off, and they got mastitis, and they died and died and died. The bank foreclosed on him. A guy that was Organic Valley guy went and bought this. Before you buy a farm or add a building, you better talk to somebody to know where to put it and to have it checked out. This is my stray voltage guy that's there working. Had to unhook this, move the transformer, and clean the mess up. Did not take a lot of work. And it wasn't the power company's fault. 75% of this stuff is farmer created. It's not the power company. So, fluorescent lights give off an electromagnetic field. Here's incandescent lights, but you got a metal ceiling. Now, in this parlor here with a metal ceiling, you don't want to have electric pulsation above by the ceiling because it'll short out from. I've seen where electric pulsation with a new metal ceiling will really mess up the milking. Here's a plate cooler, stainless steel plate cooler. Be careful of them because they will put electricity into the line. You need a dielectric coupler, which I'll show you in a little bit. Here's transpositioning. This is this is on Interstate 80 coming through Nebraska. And when you take the anode and cathode and go long enough and far enough, you will build up a charge on the neutral. And to wipe out the charge that's built up from the electromagnetic field from these two electricity, they will ground it out. And so they'll take, and you can't see it very well here, but they'll take this and weave it over here, and this one over here, and this is going over a highway, concrete highway with all the green re-rod in it, and they're grounding that out into the highway. Or they'll do it on a railroad track, or they'll have a big tower by it, but these are transpositions. You don't want to be close to them. Here's a transposition also. And you can see this one is closer. You can see how they're looping the wire over, and they're going across. This is in a different area. This is a 750. This is a big one. You see, here's a tower. Here's a tower. When you get an overpass with steel girders, you're always going to see towers, cell towers. They're going to be using that overpass to ground out. Here's a transpositioning. Here is a Fluke 199. This measures AC, DC, and any other current. When you have the electric copper come out, they will measure AC current. And the AC current doesn't bother. They will not measure DC current. This is a $2,000 instrument. We have a veterinary friend that has one of these now and is doing stray voltage. Moving on. Here we have a cell tower. Here we have a capacitor. And here we have no cows. This guy gave up. We have lost so many farmers from DC current. In retrospect, when I look back, I know I've had at least 20 farmers that before I knew anything went out because of DC current. And that's why I'm giving this message. I will have arrows in my back, but we have to know this. Wind turbines, big substation. I was born and raised at Grand Meadow. This is about 5 miles away. They got 950 windmills. The windmill has a base because of the torque that goes to bedrock, 35 feet down. They got 22 ton of re-rod in the base of a wind tower, and that totally changes your grid. And what do we have in Iowa, southern Minnesota? Hog buildings sitting amongst them. It's just a tragedy what we're doing to agriculture. Here's a old glass weigh jar. You see this? That's a dielectric coupler. You want to see that in stainless steel and glass. This stops the flow of electricity. Here is a variable speed motor. All electricians want you to go to a variable speed motor. When this kicks in, you stand there with a Gauss meter that I got over here, and it's going to be flipping to 100 Gauss. And if you got, if it's in the parlor, that go with single phase motors. And they say you're not green. You're not green. No, I want to keep my cows alive. All telephones need to be grounded, and so the telephone company will hook into any ground they can find. Any ground they can find. This telephone deal here is hooked into here. They will not put their own ground in. They'll hook it onto anything. Here's an interesting thing. LP tanks. Wisconsin passed a law that says all LP tanks with a copper hose, delivery hose, has to put an interruption for current flow. You will get a half a volt of electricity from this bulk tank going into this milking parlor right behind me. And what do we have here? We have a well. Here's the well. Here's the tank. Okay, here's the tank. And this is just over 10 feet. Here's the milk house. What do we got here? What do we got here? We got electrolysis. Plus he's got a drive-through gate right here, and he's grounded it right into his concrete, re-rotted concrete. He had a water tank in here, a concrete water built years ago, and they put re-rod in it. And these cows, to ground themselves out, there was a little step there, and they get on this step, and they would put their front feet in the water tank to ground themselves out and drink water. So he fixed them. He put a wire with a metal half-inch pipe so that they'd hit themselves and get a shock. And he had a Gallagher fencer also. People don't know. I mean, they're not being stupid. Nobody has ever told them how to put in the fencer. And this is day one. Signs of stray current. We'll go through these real quick. High cell count. Nervous cows. Foot problems. Incomplete digestion of grain. Teat ends that are puckered out like they overmilked. Incomplete milk letdown, especially on heifers. You'll get done and you look at that hind teat and you can go over and squirt 5 pounds of milk out of it. No response to treatment. The veterinarians just hate these. The farmer just hates them. 50% of the farms that I have DC current on, you have a back problem, or the wife's got fibromyalgia, or you get bedwetting. It's one of the first questions I ask. Do you have any kids that bedwet? In my last one, the guy said, yeah. I said, how many? He said, well, 4 of our 5 boys wet the bed every night, and he had a major problem. And there will be farms that are not fixable, but most of them are fixable. Refusal to go in a stall. They'll come up to it, and we call them gutter jumpers, and they don't want to go in, so they'll jump in, and then they slam into the stall, whether it's a free stall or a tie stall, and then you douse. I go for where's negative energies, and you go by, boom. And else that stall is gone, or it is empty, or there's a gutter grate there. I say, why is that gutter grate there? Oh, she's a gutter jumper. No, she doesn't. She's smarter than you are. First service conception, tail twitching but not switching. And they'll move their feet, and the tail will go. Low production, high death loss, Yonis takes off. Just when you get a herd that all of a sudden they got Yonis, you better look for DC current. Refusal to lay down, failure to lay in a stall, refusal to drink in water cups, dancing cows, gutter jumpers. We're going to move on. Here is very common. Left foot up, nose on the curb. Now, if it's in a tie stall with chains, she'll wrap that chain around her nose and put it. Smart meters. Smart meters will put DC current right into the building. I had one last summer, one of my little clients that was nice, clean operation. They put a new smart meter in on a new pole right by his barn, and he had 4 cows when I got there. And he said, I can't keep any cows alive in these 4 stalls. And 3 of them were standing there with their foot up and their chain pressed to the nose. And I said, how long have you been doing this? He said, well, a couple months. And I said, well, about the time they put that pole in. And he had a smart meter. He had a smart meter. When you get a smart meter, opt out. Opt out. Use the old digital, or go back to the old one. And they will. We have to pay $50 a month to have them come out and read our meter, but we don't want a smart meter on our place. There's a lot of research done on that. Okay, here's a cow. You can't see it. This is South Dakota, but her stall she has crawled over the stall, and she's pushing this cow, and she doesn't want to stand in this stall. And I doused it, and she had a hot spot there. Here's what a calf looks like. Cats love negative energy. This is a steel building with a big wire going across it, and they can't raise calves. This is a typical stray voltage calf that should be 150 pounds heavier. It's got lice, it's got ringworm, it looks like, and when these cats lay in there, they love negative energies. This one we solved real easy. We moved the line. 10 o'clock in the morning, the guy milked, he fed them, not one cow was laying down. They should be laying down, chewing their cud, and the whole herd is standing there. And if you watch, you'll see this girl here is twitching her tail. They'll pick up a foot, put it down, they'll pick up another foot. If you watch them, to be a good dairy farmer, you got to be like a veterinarian. Veterinarians have to be good observers. Train yourself to be an observer and watch things. See what you look at. And girls are better at this than boys. Boys are OCD. A lot of them are like their dad. Not me, of course, but I mean, here's a Gauss meter. Every one of Organic Valley's guys, I think you can get them for like $129. Anyway, they're interesting. Here's a cow lapping water with the tongue. Cardinal sign. And they won't drink water, and they will crash. Same cow. And then for some reason they do this. When there's stray current, and you don't see this very often, but she'll drink water, and she'll go like that. Now, watch how a cow drinks water. Watch how a cow, when a cow gets thirsty and says, I'm going to walk down there and drink some water. She should walk down there, and the first thing she'll do is sip it. She'll put her nose in, and she's taking the temperature, she's tasting it. Is it full of LJ? If you want to get rid of your LJ in your stock tank, you use structured water. That gets rid of the LJ. She's testing it, and it tastes pretty good. So then she'll go down, and if you're standing on her left side, the esophagus goes on the center, and it goes halfway down, it goes on the left side. And this is where a magnet stops on a hardware cow that's not bringing her cud up because it's dry. A magnet they can spit out. You got to make sure with a compass it's in the rumen. But anyway, she'll go, and she's taking in huge, and you'll see this coursing down. You'll see that water go, vroom, vroom, and she'll usually go 12 to 15 big slurps, and they're really taking it in. Probably drank 2.5 gallons, and then they come up for air, and they'll always lick their nose. Or if you give a cow a pill, or a magnet, and she just stands there and looks at her, she didn't swallow that. When a cow swallows a pill or a magnet, she will always, and I won't show you, but she licks her nose, okay? Anyway, and then they go back down, and they'll do that again. And if a cow, I got a scientific explanation. If a cow pussyfoots around the water tank and doesn't drink, you got a problem with that water. You just do. And if they ever start lapping, you get on it. You got a problem. Here's over a rubber tank. That's a no-no. That puts a static charge on that water. And the CAFO is ideal. I have a bank consortium that hires me to go and look at these farms that have over $1 million debt, or if they want to add 2 robots, a huge installation, and they're concerned, they got $10,000 debt per cow, they'll say, go look at that before we invest further, and I'll do a walkthrough. And you'll get this edematous brisket, and you can walk right through, and if 40–50% of the cows got this edematous brisket, you have a problem. You better go looking for where their stray current is. That's a real key. There's so many of these little things. This took me 54 years to learn, guys. I didn't pick this up on Wednesday, and so that's why I want to pass this on. They don't talk anything about this in vet school. You don't get any of this. Personal observation. Here's a smart meter. Here's a smart meter. All I can say is beware. If they want to put a smart meter on, try and opt out, okay? Because it puts DC current. The state of New Mexico has outlawed smart meters. There is a county co-op in Illinois that has outlawed smart meters. And there's a group in Michigan, in southern Michigan, that don't want smart meters. Smart meters will put a DC current into your house also. I got a call from eastern Wisconsin, a Mennonite fellow that had a metal shop, and he milked 30 cows, organic cows, nice little herd, and he decided to build a new metal shop and have a house in it. So concrete floor, steel building, steel sides, steel roof, pretty big. He's got this metal shop. They move in. He's got 3 daughters, and they get a smart meter. In about a month, the daughters are, they're stiff. Go to the doctor. We'll put you on this drug. That'll take care of it. It gets worse. The wife, all of a sudden, you got fibromyalgia. Okay, and they finally decided, you 3 girls have got rheumatoid arthritis. And this guy thought, how can I have 3 daughters with rheumatoid arthritis in that? And a neighbor of his said, you better call Dettloff. Something's up. And I started quizzing him, and I said, do any of those girls wet the bed? And he said, they are so embarrassed. They're 14 and 15 years old, and 2 of them now wet the bed. And they never wet the bed in their life. And he said, since we put this smart meter on, he said, life's just miserable. I said, get that thing off of there right now. Get that right off there. He was putting this metal building with this concrete, was just wiping them out. So beware. If they won't opt out, you better go political and find out if you can. Call your electrical co-op and nicely ask for a service update. If you've got a rusty transformer or you want your transformer moved out in the driveway. And their comment is that, well, you'll get line loss. That's a blatant lie. The state of Maine has every transformer in the ditch at the end of the driveway. And you're telling me that voltage is going to leak out of this wire going over here? It doesn't leak out. There's no line loss. Get that transformer away from any animal facility as far as you can. And just state it. But approach them. You get more bees with honey than you do vinegar. Or hire an expert, and there's getting to be more. What did I do? Oh. Okay. This is where I go, John. Okay, the treatment, call your electrical people, hire somebody, and there's getting to be more and more guys. You got some out in the East Coast now and that. Clean up your own mess. Useful fixes. You can read this in my book too. You can get isolated. Reduce all possible current on farms that are prescribed here. You should feed high bricks, highly mineralized, high forage diet. Get on a soils program. Watch cattle closely for these signs of stray volage. You want to create an atmosphere that your cattle can live in. And there's been a number of places that I've dealt with, and my friend, the consultant, has dealt with, where you should not have cattle. One operation that was told at committed suicide. Second operation by a nuclear plant was told, get out. Committed suicide. This is a human health. A cell is a cell, folks. And just remember that we are a salt-filled sack of everything in meridians. Anybody in acupuncture, you have meridians, and meridians are electrical lines. From every organ in the body, there's a meridian, and that's current flow. We're nothing but a bunch of current in salt water surrounded by skin. And when you take on a different charge or electromagnetic field, it screws up your immune system big time. Some of these people that die from COVID are in, I would wonder how many people that died from COVID were living in a house with DC current. There's got to be some. There's got to be some. I guess my time is up. She's looking daggers at me, but anyway, if you want to know about electromagnetic fields, this new book came out, and G5s, and he covers it all, and he talks about smart meters in here. The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. You can get it on the internet. Read this. It'll scare the kajibis out of you. You've read it, haven't you? Yes. Scared you? Yeah. But
you want to take some questions?
You want some? I'll stay around if you have questions. So thank you. You've been a good crowd. If everybody learned one thing, I'm happy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. We're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experiences.